Good afternoon, and welcome to the April 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Housing Authority members Ajinyan, Asadarian.
Here.
Brotman.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Farazian.
Here.
Chair Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
Yes, the agenda for the April 2nd, 2024 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on March 29th, 2024 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And the next item?
Next are the approval of minutes of the regular Housing Authority of March 5th, 2024.
Is there a motion?
I'll move for A.
Ms.
Second.
Parazian, Ms. Devine. Moved and seconded. Are there any objections or corrections that anyone would like noted in the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes will be deemed approved unanimously. Next item, please.
Next are oral communications. We do not have any calls or cards.
Okay,
And
and let's go to item 6.
Item 6 is business agenda. Item A, community development regarding public hearing and approval of the Section 8 Public Housing Agency Annual Plan Fiscal Year 2024-2025. One resolution adopting and authorizing the submission of the Public Housing Agency Annual Plan for Fiscal Year 2024-2025.
Mr. Galanian.
Yes, good afternoon, Housing Chair Najarian, members of the Housing Authority. This item, HUD requires that we have a public hearing and public comment period before staff is able to submit this fiscal year's annual plan to HUD. With that, I'll turn it over to Edgar Akopian, our senior housing analyst, to provide more detail on this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Galandian. Good afternoon, Housing Authority Chair Najarian and members of the Housing Authority. Today, we're here to present our annual public hearing for the Section 8 Annual Plan for fiscal year 2024-2025. This plan is important because it's required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for full program compliance and continued funding of the Section 8 program. Since the Glendale Housing Authority has been rated a high-performing agency by HUD, we're eligible to submit a streamlined plan. The annual plan is essentially a roadmap that guides our Section 8 PHA policies, programs, operations, and strategy for meeting local housing needs and goals. It's a comprehensive guide that also provides a progress report on the goals and objectives that were outlined in the 5-year PHA plan that was adopted in 2020. This year's annual plan provides a snapshot of financial resources for running the Section 8 program and focuses on current and upcoming program changes such as new payment standards and upcoming policy changes by way of small area fair market rents and the Housing Opportunity through Modernization Act. The Glendale Section 8 program currently consists of an allocation of approximately 2,883 vouchers, which will require a budget of $49.1 million to continue to provide this level of service. In December of 2023, the payment standards for the Housing Choice programs were increased, which benefited tenants by lowering their rent portions and also allowing them to rent units at a higher rental amount. The increased affordability limits also incentivized landlords to rent to Section 8 tenants because it allowed them to charge rents that reflect current market conditions. Several changes occurred at the federal level as well, prompting the Section 8 program to adopt new policies. One of those changes was a mandate for Glendale to begin using small area fair market rents in the determination of its payment standards. The traditional method of establishing payment standards has been to base them on metropolitan area fair market rents. In 2023, HUD mandated the Glendale Housing Authority to change this method and implement small area fair market rents for determining its payment standards. The new method utilizes zip codes within metropolitan areas to determine the payment standards. This means that future payment standards will more accurately reflect rents in different neighborhoods. The aim of small area FMRs is to benefit tenants by allowing them access to areas of higher opportunities and reduce voucher concentration in a small number of neighborhoods. This should also help the Housing Authority boost its performance in the Section 8 Management Assessment Program, CMAP, by allowing for an opportunity to earn deconcentration bonus points. The other set of significant changes were prompted by the implementation of the Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act, HOTMA. The intent of HOTMA was to ease the burden on public housing authorities by streamlining the rules governing the administration of federally subsidized programs such as Section 8. Some of the major changes include changes in the requirements related to income reviews and the establishment of maximum asset limits for program eligibility and continued assistance. Staff is currently working on the adoption of the new rules in the Section 8 Administrative Plan, which is set to go into effect on January 1, 2025. We will bring it to the Housing Authority for approval once the changes are completed. Other changes include changes to the Section 8 Inspection Protocol. The new protocol, called the National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate, INSPIRE, is set to go into effect on October 1, 2024. The new protocol will focus on the health, safety, and functional defects over appearance in order to produce inspection results that reflect the true physical condition of a property. A few progress report updates. We currently have approximately 1,500 people on our waiting list, following our recent purge and continued lease-up efforts. Our EHV lease-up is up to 189 clients. We have 36 more to lease up to reach our maximum allocation of 225. Also of note, we issued vouchers to an additional 50 EHV clients who were ported and leased up in other cities. We're also continuing our EHV incentive program to help attract current as well as new owners to rent to our EHV clients. So far, it's been very successful, and we have spent $500,000 on this effort and attracted 61 new owners to our program. Now, to make sure we were meeting the needs of our community, we met with our Resident Advisory Board, our RAB, in February to make sure the plan, to review the plan and obtain comments. The RAB had general questions about the budget, tenant rent portions, and concerns about landlords' willingness to rent to the Section 8 clients. The RAB also expressed their appreciation for the program and acknowledged the hard work and excellent customer service of GHA staff. Those comments will be included and submitted to HUD. We also published a notice of the Section 8 annual plan to the general public, but we did not receive any comments. So we are here today to ask for your support in adopting a resolution authorizing the submission of the Section 8 PHA annual plan for fiscal year 2024-2025 to HUD. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. I have a question. First is procedural. Is this a hearing? Okay, it's not noticed as a hearing. So that may create a problem, I think. It's just shown as well, but not on the agenda that that was published. My, our PowerPoint says it's a hearing, but it's under I think what the public sees as a business agenda. So I think that's a problem in terms of proper notice. Other than that, it was a great presentation. I mean, but I just want to make sure we solve this little technicality.
What it says in the recommendation, if I may, Mr. Chair of the Housing Authority, is to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution. So it should be noticed as a public hearing. Perhaps staff can address any constraints on timing were that to be re-noticed as a public hearing. That is,
You have a
in
deadline,
fact,
I guess? That's the question. What's your
correct,
deadline?
whether there's a
I can open the hearing and all that, but the issue is how it was agendized.
how it was agendized.
Noticed
Agreed.
and agendized.
Mr. Chair, members of the authority, the deadline to HUD for submittal is April 17th? April 17th. So if it
we won't-
continues on, we have the 9th if that's available.
No, I don't
talk
think
on
we
the
meet the
9th.
9th.
And then we have the 16th.
Is that cutting it too
Possible?
close for you?
I'm hearing it's too close, if it's the 16th.
Is there any emergency action we can take to disregard the notice issue?
Typically, in an emergency, well, it would be a 24-hour notice. For an emergency hearing could be held within 24-hour notice with proper information that would support the urgency of the situation, which here you have a federal deadline that you have to adhere to for submission of the plan.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Kasakian?
could we get some clarity as to why the 16th would not work if it's simply an approval?
Approval of the plan following a notice public hearing. Correct.
The issue would be concerned with regards to the signature gathering that would be needed.
From who?
Chair of the Housing Authority, and then the appropriate staff, city manager as well. If that could be
That's
done
the only thing.
in the one day,
We'll be
then-
here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just have the document
I
ready.
think we'll be here.
It's not an
Okay.
issue.
Can't, things happen, but.
we can
Well,
do
I
it that way.
don't think we have any other choice, but we can certainly address questions that we have on the item and have an abbreviated public hearing on the 16th. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues for any comments that they may. Mr. Kazakian?
Yes, thank you. I would like to know, it was mentioned about the incentive program for EHV owners. Can we get a public explanation as to what some of these incentives are and perhaps what the challenges have been to encouraging folks to participate in the program and how we're addressing it?
Thank you, Authority Member Kasakian. The reason we have an incentive program for the EHV emergency housing vouchers is because that particular population is difficult to house. And so the Glendale Housing Authority, along with other housing authorities, do have incentive programs to incentivize owners. And
I'd like to just have staff go on the record with what some of those incentives are. Perhaps someone's watching and it'll pique their interest.
Yes.
And also, folks who don't want to necessarily participate in the EHV, the emergency housing vouchers, but may want to offer up properties for Section 8 tenants.
so we have 5 incentives. The first one is $3,000 for any new landlords coming onto the program. If we have someone who has left the program but not within 12 months, we have a welcome back for $2,000. If it's an existing landlord, we have a $2,000 incentive for continuing to rent to them with a cap of $6,000. We have an inspection holding program for a maximum of $1,000 to cover any amount of days that the owner has to wait for an inspection. And finally, we have a mitigation program for up to $5,000 if the unit were to be damaged in any way by the client.
And I'd like to also note, Mr. Chair, that from my conversations with landlords, especially during the pandemic when there were individuals who were falling behind on rent, I believe that no one, if I'm not mistaken, who was a participant in the Section 8 program fell into that category. So it is a program that is definitely beneficial to those landlords who do decide to participate. I want to encourage anyone who's perhaps watching this or considering it, maybe on the fence, to open up some of their units to tenants who are in the Section 8 program.
I agree with your observations that landlords have told me that they very much appreciate the Section 8 tenant. They are very caring for the property. Of course, the rent is almost guaranteed, if you
Yes.
will, and they certainly appreciate the benefit that they're receiving. So they don't want to rock the boat. They want to be good tenants and have a long-term tenancy. So that is a point well taken. Councilmember Asaturya.
How are we communicating with landlords for the incentive programs?
So we're giving this information, we are marketing it to landlords. So when they call, when they inquire, we're letting them know. Also, when we issue a voucher to an EHV client, we're letting the client know. So when the client goes out to rent for units, they also give this information to the landlord.
Are we coordinating anything with, say, the Realtors Association or the Apartments Association or the Tenants Union?
We haven't
Yes.
We haven't done so in the past, but that's something that we can certainly look into.
I think it would be worthwhile. You have new landlords all the time, big and small. And so if we are trying to expand that pool, not just having it be something where they have to inquire or the tenant's letting them know, but we're, doing proactive outreach would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report, by the way.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I made some inquiries with housing staff concerning the nature of the noticing that occurred that's required by HUD. It was properly noticed as a public hearing. The agenda item, although it says business agenda, the actual listing of the agenda item does say a public hearing. So for purposes of proceeding with this item today, it could be treated as a de facto public hearing. It could be opened. We know that wouldn't add further business to the housing authority in the future. So in consideration of the information that I've learned, that it was properly noticed in the newspaper as a public hearing, it is listed under business agenda, but it is listed as a public hearing. I would submit to the Housing Authority and to the chair that it could be treated as a de facto public hearing and not have to continue it until the 16th in order to simply open and close.
Are there any objections to holding this as a de facto public hearing for the item? Okay, no objections.
I don't have any objection, but where does it say, I'm just looking at the business agenda. It doesn't say anything about public hearing.
In fact, it does under 6A, it says
public
community
hearing,
development,
right in front of
Ray,
me.
public
Okay.
hearing and approval. But what I wanted, of course, to confirm is whether the HUD required public notice was also published, the requisite notice was published. So that has been confirmed, and so I would submit to the Housing Authority that that is a way you could proceed at this
Okay,
point.
so we don't have any objections. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing and go to Ms. Perazi.
Quick question. May we know the number of applicants on the waiting list?
Yes, Authority Member President, thank you. We have 1,500 folks on our current waiting list. We recently conducted a purge. Before the purge, we had about 1,800 people. And so we've successfully removed some people from the waiting list that were no longer interested. And we're still conducting the purge. We're in the middle of it. We haven't heard back from about 850 people from the waiting list. And so currently we're conducting follow-up to make sure those people are not interested, or we're trying to attempt to contact them. And so we expect to complete the purge by the end of this year. And upon completion of the purge, we expect to have somewhere in the neighborhood of from 650 to 1,050 individuals on the waiting list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we ever get to you, Mr.?
No, but it's okay.
Let's go to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Councilmember,
Yeah,
authority member.
I was going to bring up this, the word purge is kind of a scary word. I would rather call it a cleanup, but just confirm so people that are hearing this understand. We're not kicking anybody off the waiting list. What are we actually doing?
Absolutely not. All we're doing is we're reaching out to folks on the waiting list to see if they're still interested in being on the waiting list. And the reason for this is that when we're ready to pull from the waiting list, that process happens much faster, so it benefits people.
Okay, so some reasons why somebody may not want to be on the list is they've moved out of the area, they've passed away. I mean, what are some of the reasons you're finding that people?
Some people
Wanna be off.
some people have passed away, unfortunately. Some people have done well. They've gotten jobs. They are now homeowners. So it's a variety of different reasons.
Okay, that was good. Thank you for clarifying that. And the other question I had, it's about kind of the issue of, we have X number of vouchers, but we also have a budget, right?
Yes.
And ultimately, it's the budget that defines how many of those vouchers we can, what do you call it, lease out or?
Correct.
Or-
It's both, actually. We currently, we have an allocation of about 1,666 vouchers, which we can lease up to. However, we cannot surpass our maximum budget. So we are currently in a lease-up effort. We can lease up. We have room for 200, about a little over 200 vouchers to lease up. However, we project that we can lease up about 100 before we lease up to our maximum budget. And when we get close to that maximum budget, we work closely with HUD to determine exactly how far we can go.
Okay, so you're saying we have 200 vouchers potentially, but we only have enough money to lease out around 100.
That's what we're forecasting, correct?
So that leads to my next question. So when we raise the payment standard, which I understand is good for, if you're looking for a unit, it's good for the landlords, that means that just chews up more of our budget. So that means that this gap between what we can fund and what we have on paper, that gets wider. Is that the right way of thinking about it?
That's correct. The way we look at it is it's a balancing act. Because if we don't, first, we must increase the payment standards at least to 80% of the FMRs. So we can't let it, 90%. So we can't let it drop below that. But more than that, if we don't increase them, then tenants have a hard time affording their units. And as importantly, landlords don't want to rent to Section 8 clients anymore because they're saying, I can get more rent from the open market, so I don't want to work with you anymore. So it's sort of like a balancing act to keep the program humming.
Okay, and my last question, similar, is so this new policy about using a local zip code rather than looking at the whole metropolitan area for determining the fair market value rent, what is the actual impact to us here in Glendale? And are we going to have different payment standards for different sections of the city, different
Yes.
zip codes?
Yes,
Yeah,
essentially.
maybe explain that a little bit.
Yes, essentially that's what it means. We're going to have different payment standards for the various zip codes. It could be that we'll have the same payment standard for a couple of zip codes or maybe 3 or 4. We're in the midst of conducting that study to determine where we're going to, how it's going to look once it's done. But it's something that we're mandated to do. And it's something that HUD mandated us to do,
Right.
going forward. And how it will impact the budget, we may be we may have to increase some payment standards depending on how that study goes. But we currently don't have that information because we're currently working on that but we will bring that to the Housing Authority for approval later this year.
Okay, so that's not in effect yet. Okay.
Correct.
I appreciate your answers and the clarity of your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good.
Authority Member Devine.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing about that small areas to determine. That's an interesting way. Explains it perfectly. Thank you. My other question is about the inspection changes.
Yes.
And are they more intense? Are they more rigorous? Will that require more staff?
They are not more intense. It's a different way of looking at things. One of the major reasons why HUD did this is to streamline the criteria across different programs. So some housing authorities have public housing. There are other HUD programs, and then there's the Section 8 program. Each of them have different standards. So Inspire sets the same standards across the board. So that's one thing. As far as being rigorous, it's a different way of looking at it, but it's mainly based on health and safety rather than physical appearance. So our landlords shouldn't see, they may not see any difference on their end. It's just a different way, a different protocol, a different system we're going to be using.
Okay. All right, thank you. And you said that we have 61 new owners, new
Yes.
landlords.
Yes.
But that's not the number of units that we have from these landlords, is it? We might have more than 61 units.
Correct. So the great thing is, once we get an owner on board, once they see how easy it is to work with us, their housing assistant payments are guaranteed, the service that we provide to them, they continue to give us more units and rent to our clients.
Okay, that's terrific. That's terrific. You know, I've always kind of advocated for a thank you event for all these landlords, and I hope that in the future the Housing Authority will think about doing that, because these folks are coming to the aid of many, and I really want them to know that they are appreciated. And I know the last time we did that, I think when I was mayor, it was very successful, and they were very, very grateful. So I'd like to see that happen again. And are most of the incentives you were talking about, are those one-time payments? The 2,000, the 3,000?
For example, if it's a welcome to the program, that's a one-time payment. Yes, these are one-time payments. There's a loyalty incentive, and they could get 3 of those if they rent to 3 tenants, because there's a maximum cap of $6,000.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for those answers, and thank you for your report. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council or from the authority? Is there any public comment?
We have one caller. Our only caller is Fernando. Fernando, you're on air. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. It's always a pleasure to be on board on these meetings. The only thing I request in these kind of, when it comes to budget and all, please, and I beg of you before, and I'll say it again, do not forget about people with disabilities. I'm talking about people in wheelchairs, canes, crutches, walkers, you name it. I'd like to see that this group jointly have a relationship with some of our ILCs, our independent living centers. For example, Glendale, of course, is connected to Van Nuys, but we could also connect you with my organization, CalLife, Communities Actively Living Independently Free in downtown LA. So I bring this up because, since it's, as a person who's in a wheelchair, it's very difficult to find housing these days, no matter what the outcome is. And I do ask that you work with these landlords to make some of these apartments affordable and ADA compliant. And I'd be more than willing to help if the mayor and the council would let me do that. But please, I do beg of you, do not forget about us as well. Thank you.
Authority Member Devine?
Do we have any apartments that are ADA compliant that we can use for the disabled?
Authority Member Devine, the way it works with the voucher program is we issue the tenant a voucher, and then they go out and try to find a unit that meets their needs. Now with our program, they can, if they need a special modification, there is a process to get that done through reasonable accommodation. As well, for folks with disabilities, if they need any accommodation to enjoy the benefits of the program, we do have a process for them to go through a reasonable accommodation to accomplish that.
Okay, is that it for the comments?
Yes.
Authority Member Asaturian?
Is there a way for us to provide better incentives for those that would provide ADA compliance?
Authority Member Asaturian, the incentive program is currently only for the emergency choice voucher program. We do not have an incentive program for our regular Glendale vouchers.
Could we create one? If
We-
we wanted to, if this council
we-
or the authority wanted to.
I'm not sure if there's anything preventing us. I think it may be a matter of budget. With the emergency housing vouchers, we received a sizable budget because HUD recognizes that that's a challenging population. And so if we wanted to create an incentive program for our regular HCV program, we would have to take a look at it. And again, it would be a matter of budget as well.
The process that you talk about, is it a long process for them to be able to convert to or make those accommodations, or?
So if Section 8 needs a modification of the unit, the reasonable accommodation would be requested from the owner. And so it's something that we would provide information and facilitate the process. We would help the owner and the tenant understand the responsibilities, but it's something that would happen between the two parties.
Do we provide resources to the landlord to make those accommodations?
No, we don't have any resources for that.
Okay. Well, I think this might be something we want to look into, and how we make it more accessible.
Okay.
Let me ask, can I
Yeah,
just
sure,
follow up on that? I mean, I guess the question in my mind hearing this conversation is, have we had a history of people with disabilities finding that they can't locate suitable accommodations? If we have not, then it doesn't sound like there's a problem to fix.
Authority Member Brotman, we typically don't have that issue of tenants requesting modifications to their unit. That's not something we typically have. Usually with a reasonable accommodation, it's something, when tenants request an accommodation, it's something that has to do with our program. And for example, a live-in aid, someone might say, I'm disabled, I need someone to live with me to take care of me. I'm requesting a reasonable accommodation for that. That's a typical one. And that's something that we approve and we allow, and that's something that does not cost, that doesn't have a cost to the tenant.
I see. Okay.
And authority members, as Mr. Akopian mentioned earlier, the physical, I think that's what
Yeah,
you're
that's what I
referring
was
to,
looking
physical reasonable accommodation is something that's, the arrangements are made between the tenant and the landlord, and there are certain regulations that govern those requirements to accommodate a disabled tenant within a unit.
Okay, seeing as we have no other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing, the de facto public hearing, and ask for a motion on the resolution.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Let's take roll call, please.
Housing Authority Members Ajinian, Asadrian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Parazian,
Yes.
Chair Najarian.
Yes. Are there any authority member or staff comments?
None for me.
Seeing none, We move to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.